Department and the IRS have now issued roughly 90 million stimulus payments less than 1 week after the signed into law. Now, those payments were worth more than $242 billion. That's nearly 60% of the total amount of those checks. Now, most of the payments were direct deposits, and Treasury said that everyone who got the money in their bank accounts will be able to access it as of today.
Now, as such, you may have not noticed that in 2022, the wage cap rose from $142,000 to $147,000, leaving higher earners to pay taxes on an additional $4,200 of income. The Hawaii U.S. Senator Mazie Hirono has also co-sponsored and introduced a bill that would improve the solvency of Social Security and equalize the tax burden so that the wealthiest segment of society would pay a similar percentage as others. Most Americans pay 6% of their wages into Social Security, but the effective tax rate for the wealthy is significantly lower. The legislation requires the wealthiest Americans to eventually pay more by phasing out the cap on their Social Security contributions, which in 2022 is $147,000. The bill has the backlog of a coalition and a backing of a coalition, including the National Committee to Preserve Social Security, Medicare, and the Alliance for Retired Americans. The Protecting and Preserving Social Security Act calls for adjustments in cost of living adjustments to be based on real expenses reflected in a consumer price index, rather than a current consumer price index for urban wage earners. Social Security Works President Nancy Altman told reporters, "With prices rising, it's more than ever for Social Security's annual COLA to reflect the real expenses that beneficiaries face every day." The Protecting and Preserving Social Security Act would do just that, but updating the formula used to calculate. Congress is actually facing some big pressure, everybody, and a new deadline to come to an agreement. If Democrats and Republicans do not reach a deal soon, the government may shut down. This could affect millions of people and their monthly benefit checks. Congressional leaders are facing an obstacle that could actually risk a government shutdown. It comes after Chuck Schumer and West Virginia Senator Manchin have already agreed to support the Inflation Reduction Act. Bernie Sanders has criticized the side deal that Schumer and Manchin agreed upon. The deal would streamline the permitting process for energy projects across the U.S. Schumer agreed to include with a must-pass spending bill to fund the federal government, but today Sanders said that he intends to oppose the funding resolution as a result. Bernie Sanders said, if U.S. Congress goes on record and says we are going to support some fossil fuel reduction, more carbon emissions, the signal we are sending to our own people is a terrible signal. So when asked if he would vote no on government funding and if the Schumer-Manchin permitting deal is attached, Sanders replied, yes, you're talking about the future for the planet. Sanders' opposition adds to the growing progressive pressure in the House of Representatives, where some progressive lawmakers have likewise threatened to block the government funding bill if it includes Manchin's desired changes to energy permitting. Manchin has argued that permitting reform will also help speed projects related to wind, solar, and other environmentally friendly sources of energy. He's adamant that permitting reform must stay in the funding bill, and so far he seems to have Schumer's backing. Still, some other Republicans are vowing to oppose the funding resolution because they oppose Schumer and Manchin's deal-making. Many conservatives have said they took umbrage at the last-minute nature of the deal among Democrats on the sweeping climate and healthcare reform. So here's some big news. Social Security, SSI, and SSDI, and as well as VA beneficiaries. If you guys have any of those, be sure to keep on watching this video. If you filed your taxes on paper this year, you might have to wait several more months to receive your refund check. According to a testimony at the House Committee subcommittee hearing from the National Taxpayer Advocate, refund checks will actually take about 6 months to arrive for paper filers this year. So the IRS watchdog has been sounding the alarm for months on the pile of paper that the agency has been behind on. In the annual report to Congress at the end of 2021, people said that paper is the IRS kryptonite, and the agency is still buried in it. So during the hearing, the IRS watchdog noted that the IRS employees scrutinize paper forms carefully and they have to deal with the 2020 paper backlog first. So the IRS has struggled to deal with additional crisis-related duties, like administering stimulus checks and advanced child tax credit payments last year, layered on top of chronic underfunding and understaffing. That's led to an unprecedented backlog of unprocessed tax returns. Now, Collins has estimated that, as of the end of December, the IRS had a backlog of 6 million unprocessed original individual returns and 2.3 million unprocessed amended returns. At this month's hearing, IRS Commissioner Chuck Reddick estimated that the agency still had to work through 2.4 million paper returns filed in the calendar year of 2021. Reddick has repeatedly said that the agency needs more funding to carry out all the duties that it's tasked with. So, Treasury officials have announced this week that the agency could be nearing a breaking point. Funding issues and the resulting backlog have implications beyond just a pile of paper. Some taxpayers have been left hanging and waiting on refunds for months. Filers previously told Insider that refund check delays have made it harder to afford groceries, childcare, and even their homes. And even with the 2021 filing season wrapping up, some taxpayers are still waiting on checks from years past. If you're among the estimated 1.5 million taxpayers who never filed a tax return for 2018, the IRS could actually still owe you money. According to a federal law, taxpayers who are owed a refund during any given year must claim it within 3 years. For 2018, that's this year's, which means the deadline to claim your 3-year-old refund is the same deadline as for filing your taxes this year. Unless you want the US Treasury to permanently end up with your refund, you have to file and postmark a 2018 return by this year. Also, everybody, unclaimed tax refunds are not all uncommon. According to a recent update by the IRS, the federal government is currently sitting on about $1.5 billion worth of unclaimed refunds. The median size of those refunds varies by state, anywhere from $720 for taxpayers in South Carolina to north of $900 for taxpayers in Alaska and Wyoming. Nationally, the IRS estimates that the median unclaimed refund is about $813. If you want to claim your 2018 refund, keep in mind that you should file a return for 2019 and 2022. Otherwise, the IRS might hold on to your check until you do so. Folks, I truly appreciate everyone's support. If you guys have any more questions on the fourth stimulus check, leave them in the comments.
As an immigrant myself, along with my colleague from Washington, I want to reiterate to President Biden that we expect him to follow through on his promise to end Title 42 provisions by May 23rd. Lest we forget that the Trump administration's cruel anti-immigrant policies have left hundreds of children separated from their families, some permanently. It kept thousands more in overcrowded, unsanitary detention centers and terrorized immigrant communities like my neighborhood in Chicago, where I've lived for over 50 years. Let's be totally clear. This has never been about public health. Let me say it out loud. Title 42 needs to go. To my fellow Democrats who will be caving under political pressure, I want to reiterate. It would be a huge mistake for Democrats to shy away from dismantling this cruel plank of Trump's anti-immigrant agenda. Pandemic-related restrictions are being lifted across the country, yet Title 42 restrictions remain in place. But just last month, that double standard was created when Ukrainian refugees were granted exemption from Title 42 restrictions to enter the U.S. They should be allowed here. It's the right thing to do, but that should be the policy for all those seeking political asylum. So let me be clear. Those refugees should be admitted, but Black and Latino immigrants, including Haitians and Mexicans and Central Americans fleeing dire situations, must be treated with the same dignity. In fact, some immigrants in Latin America are coming from countries with higher vaccination rates than Ukraine, making any public health justification to keep Title 42 in place fall flat on its face. Instead of bowing to election year pressures and the anti-immigrant tactics of the right, Democrats must support President Biden and his commitment to end.
CEOs made 254 times more than the average worker. In the same year, corporate profits reached unprecedented levels, the highest ever recorded. Predictably, too many corporations are growing profit margins on the back of families. CEOs complain about rising costs. They blame workers. They claim they just have to raise prices, all while funneling more profits to themselves more than ever. I guess that CEOs just have to make 54 times more than workers who make their companies successful. That's no coincidence. After decades of growing market concentration, consumers and small businesses are at the mercy of ever larger, ever more powerful, ever more unaccountable corporations. Senator Tester is discussing in the Ag Committee right now what this means for farmers. They raise your costs, they mislead you, they even scam you, too often with little accountability and no meaningful consequences. They have armies of high-priced lobbyists and attorneys ready to fight anyone who dares to take them on. Normal people don't have these kinds of resources. They don't have a white shoe law firm on retainer. They don't have an insider on K Street looking out for them. But now they have you, Director. They have you and the dedicated public servants with you at the CFPB, fighting to make sure to keep Americans keep more of their hard-earned money. For 4 years, CFPB was run by a director and pressured by an administration that always looked out for corporations over workers. The director was a favorite of payday lenders. Instead of being a voice for consumers, they turned their agency into yet another arm of corporate power. Your work for consumers could not be more different. Let me run through that. When you testified in October, you introduced your agenda to usher in a new era of consumer protection. We're seeing the results. The Bureau challenged junk fees that banks and credit card companies collect. According to CFPB's research in 2019, major credit card companies charged consumers $14 billion in punitive credit card fees. Banks charge consumers more than $15 billion in overdraft and non-sufficient fund fees. Americans paid tens of billions, that's billions with a B, in credit card and overdraft fees. By pushing banks to stop taxing consumers with junk fees, the CFPB keeps money in American bank accounts, not on corporate profit statements. You've worked as part of the PAVE Interagency Task Force to examine the process behind the valuation of what is the single biggest source of families' wealth, their homes. You work to identify and root out discrimination and bias in the appraisal process that hurts homeowners and communities and contributes to the wealth disparities we see today. And you've started the long overdue work to ensure consumers